The ancient church bells tolled overhead, each resonant chime vibrating through my chest like an accusation. My trembling fingers clutched the modest bouquet of white roses, their fragrance cloying and suffocating in the stuffy cathedral air. Whispers rippled through the pews behind me, growing louder with each second Greg was late to the altar. "He's not coming," my sister Melanie whispered, her hand warm on my bare shoulder. I refused to believe it, even as my borrowed wedding dress, too tight across the chest and too loose in the waist, felt like it was slowly strangling me. My 5-year-old daughter Lily fidgeted in her flower girl dress at the front pew, already bored with the delay, oblivious to the humiliation unfolding around her mother. "Just wait," I insisted, my voice barely audible. Traffic, maybe, but I knew. Deep down, I knew. The text message I'd received an hour earlier, and had been too afraid to read fully, suddenly burned in my memory. "I can't do this, Emma. Taking on another man's responsibility." Responsibility. That's what my daughter had become in Greg's eyes. Not the sweet, innocent child who had called him new daddy for the past 8 months, but a burden. A responsibility he'd decided, at the last possible moment, he couldn't bear. The murmurs grew louder. 83 guests, most from Greg's side, shifting uncomfortably in the pews of St. Augustine's Cathedral. The priest gave me a pitying look that made my stomach turn. "Maybe you should call him again," Melanie suggested, though we both knew it was useless. I'd called 17 times in the past 30 minutes. The cathedral door creaked open. My heart leapt painfully, but it was just my best friend Rachel slipping back inside, her expression confirming what I already knew. She gave a small, devastated shake of her head. "He left a note with the best man," she whispered, pressing a folded paper into my hand. "Emma, I'm so sorry." I didn't need to read it. The weight of Greg's absence crushed the air from my lungs. 3 years of struggling as a single mother, working 2 jobs, finally meeting someone who seemed to accept both me and my daughter, all culminating in this moment of perfect public humiliation. The first tear broke free, sliding down my cheek, taking a streak of carefully applied makeup with it. I had saved for months to afford the makeup artist, wanting to be beautiful just this once. "I need to get Lily out of here," I managed to say, my voice cracking. "I can't let her see me like this." As I turned to collect my daughter, the heavy wooden doors at the back of the cathedral swung open with decisive force. Every head turned. The sound echoed through the vaulted ceiling like a thunderclap, silencing the whispers instantly. He entered like a shadow, tall, imposing, flanked by 2 suited men whose watchful eyes scanned the room with practiced efficiency. The stranger wore a charcoal suit that looked like it cost more than my annual salary. His dark hair swept back from a face that seemed carved from marble. Handsome wasn't the right word. He was beautiful in the way dangerous things often are. A sleek predator. A gathering storm. I didn't know him. I was certain of that. Yet something about him struck me as vaguely familiar. "Who is that?" Melanie whispered, but I could only shake my head. The stranger's presence commanded the room as he strode down the aisle with purposeful steps. His gaze, intense, dark, unreadable, fixed on me, and I felt pinned in place, unable to move under the weight of his scrutiny. Behind him, more men in suits filtered in, positioning themselves at the doors and along the walls. Time seemed to slow as he approached. I became acutely aware of my smeared makeup, the ill-fitting dress, my complete exposure in this moment of abandonment. Shame burned through me like acid. He stopped 3 feet from me, close enough that I could detect the faint scent of expensive cologne and something else, something sharp and masculine that made my senses heighten in primitive warning. "Emma Lawson?" His voice was low, resonant, with the barest hint of an accent I couldn't place. I managed a nod, clutching my wilting bouquet like a shield. "My name is Alexander Volkov." He said it as though I should recognize it, a subtle furrow appearing between his brows when I showed no reaction. "You don't know who I am." It wasn't a question, but I shook my head anyway. The name meant nothing to me. His dark eyes flicked to the empty spot where Greg should have been, then back to me. "Your fiancé," he said the word with thinly veiled contempt. "He isn't coming." "I know," I whispered, humiliation burning anew at having this stranger witness my rejection. Alexander's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "He worked for me. Indirectly." He owed me a significant debt. The cathedral had fallen completely silent. Even my daughter had stilled, watching the exchange with wide eyes. "I don't understand," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Greg never mentioned—" "He wouldn't have," Alexander cut in smoothly. "The debt was substantial. He believed marrying you would complicate his ability to repay." The implication hit me like a physical blow. Greg had left me at the altar not just because of Lily, but because of money. Debts to a man who commanded enough power to fill a cathedral with suited guards at a moment's notice. "Who are you?" I asked, though a cold dread was already forming in the pit of my stomach. The corner of his mouth lifted in what might have been amusement. Someone who collects what he's owed. My sister moved closer protectively, but one sharp look from Alexander froze her in place. "Your fiancé stole from me." "Did you know that?" He spoke quietly, yet his voice carried in the silent church. "He diverted funds, thinking I wouldn't notice. But I notice everything, Emma Lawson." "I had nothing to do with that," I said, finding a thin thread of defiance beneath my shame. "I know." His gaze softened fractionally, surprising me. "You're collateral damage in his escape plan. He never intended to marry you. He needed a respectable cover, a family man facade while he prepared to disappear with my money." Each word was another crack in the fragile fiction I'd built around Greg and our relationship. Had it all been a lie? His affection for Lily, his promises to give us the stable family we deserved? Mommy? Lily's small voice broke through my spiral of thoughts. She had approached silently, her flower crown askew, tiny fingers reaching for my hand. "Where's Greg? Is the wedding canceled?" Before I could answer, Alexander knelt down to Lily's level, his movement surprisingly graceful for such a commanding presence. The men at his sides tensed, hands moving subtly toward their jackets, but remained in position. "Hello, little one," he said, his voice transformed, gentler, though no less intense. "What's your name?" "I'm Lily, I'm 5. She held up 5 fingers proudly, seemingly unafraid of the stranger. "Are you a friend of Greg's?" Something dark flickered across Alexander's expression. "No, I'm not Greg's friend." Lily considered this with childish solemnity. "Is that why he's not here? Because he's afraid of you?" A surprised laugh escaped Alexander, a rich, genuine sound that transformed his severe features momentarily. "Yes, Malishka, that's exactly why." He stood again, turning his attention back to me. His gaze lingered on my face, assessing, calculating. I had the unsettling feeling he was seeing far more than my smeared makeup and devastation. "The debt must be paid," he said finally, his voice returning to that commanding tone. One way or another, fear gripped me. "I don't have any money. I barely make enough to—" "I know your financial situation," he interrupted, and the casual revelation that he knew such personal details made me shiver. "I'm not interested in what little savings you have." "Then what do you want?" My voice was barely a whisper. Alexander glanced down at Lily, then to the confused faces of my family and friends, before returning to me. "We should discuss this privately." "I'm not going anywhere with you," I said, finding courage in Lily's small hand in mine. He raised an eyebrow, the gesture somehow both elegant and threatening. "Then I'll speak plainly. Your fiancé has stolen $2 million from me. He's fled the country with my money, leaving you to face the consequences. That makes you the only available collateral." Gasps rippled through the cathedral. My sister stepped forward. "You can't be serious! She didn't do anything!" Alexander didn't even look at her. His eyes remained fixed on mine, watching my reaction with unsettling intensity. "I have a proposition for you, Emma Lawson," he said, his voice dropping lower so that only those closest could hear. "One that will settle the debt and ensure your daughter's future." "What proposition?" I asked, dread and curiosity warring within me. His answer sent a shockwave through the cathedral. "Marry me instead." The bouquet slipped from my fingers, white rose petals scattering across the polished marble floor like snow. "What?" I breathed, certain I had misheard. "Your fiancé refused to marry you," Alexander said, each word precise and deliberate. "So I'm offering to take his place." That's insane, I said, finding my voice. I don't even know you. You knew him for, what, a year? And look how that ended. His gaze was unflinching. I'm offering you security, protection, a future for your daughter. In return, the debt is erased. And if I refuse? Something shifted in his expression. A hardening. A glimpse of the steel beneath the polished exterior. Then I will collect what I'm owed through other means. Your ex-fiancé has family. They have assets. The threat was clear. I thought of Greg's elderly parents in the third pew, their confused, frightened expressions as they watched this exchange unfold. You would hurt innocent people over money? I asked, disgust rising within me. Alexander tilted his head slightly. Business is business. I prefer the elegant solution, don't you? Elegant. As if forcing a stranger into marriage at the altar where she'd just been abandoned could ever be described as elegant. This is ridiculous, I said, fighting back fresh tears. I can't just marry a stranger because another man left me. Not a stranger, he corrected. Alexander Volkov. And I'm not offering out of pity, Emma. I've had my eye on you for some time. The revelation sent a chill down my spine. What does that mean? Instead of answering, he glanced at his watch. A subtle, expensive gesture. You have a choice to make. The debt must be settled today, one way or another. You can't just... I can, he said simply, with the confidence of a man unaccustomed to hearing the word no, and I am. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what Greg had done. He hadn't just abandoned me. He had left me to face a predator he'd angered, using my heartbreak as a distraction while he fled with stolen millions. Mommy, are we still having a party? Lily asked, tugging my hand. You said there would be cake. Alexander's gaze softened as he looked at my daughter. There will definitely be cake, Malishka. Your mother and I just need to finish our conversation. His presumption ignited a spark of anger within me. Don't make promises to my child. He met my glare with unexpected appreciation in his dark eyes. Fire. Good, you'll need that. Before I could respond, he stepped closer, lowering his voice for my ears alone. I know about your struggles, Emma. The 2 jobs, the late rent payments, the payday loans. I know about Lily's father and how he left you both. I know about the medical bills you can't pay. He paused, letting each revelation sink in. I'm offering you a way out. All you have to do is say yes. My head spun with disbelief. How did he know these things? Why had he been watching me? And most disturbing of all, why would a man like him want to marry someone like me? What do you get out of this? I managed to ask. A small smile played at his lips. Let's call it a mutually beneficial arrangement. You get security. I get... His gaze traveled over me in a way that made my skin heat despite myself. Something I've wanted for some time. I opened my mouth to refuse, to tell him I couldn't possibly consider such an outrageous proposal. But my eyes caught on Lily's hopeful face, then drifted to my reflection in the stained glass. A woman in a borrowed dress with smeared makeup and crushed dreams. I need time to think, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The priest is already here. The guests are seated. It would be a shame to waste the opportunity. His tone was light, almost amused, but his eyes remained serious, watchful. Think quickly, Emma. The next few moments passed in a blur. Melanie pulled me aside, her face contorted with panic as she whispered furiously, Emma, you can't seriously be considering this. The man is clearly dangerous. I glanced over at Alexander, who stood calmly conversing with the priest. His posture relaxed yet commanding. The men who had accompanied him remained stationed throughout the cathedral, their watchful eyes never resting in one place for long. I don't have a choice, Mel, I whispered back. You heard him. If I refuse, he'll go after Greg's family. They're innocent in all this, and so are you, Melanie hissed. This is insane. We should call the police. The moment she said it, one of Alexander's men shifted closer to us. Pretending to examine a nearby statue, but clearly listening, I squeezed my sister's arm in warning. Look at these men, I murmured. Do you think the local police can protect us from whatever this is? Whoever he is? I swallowed hard. Besides, Greg stole from him. There's truth in that part at least. Melanie's eyes filled with tears. But marriage? Emma, you don't know anything about this man. I looked down at Lily, who had wandered back to her seat and was happily swinging her legs, the drama around her largely incomprehensible to her 5-year-old mind. "I know he could destroy us if I refuse," I said softly. "And I know he could provide for Lily in ways I've never been able to." The crushing weight of single motherhood, the constant financial struggle, the nights I'd gone hungry to ensure Lily had enough to eat, the medical bills piling up from her asthma treatments, all of it pressed down on me in that moment. "Just think about what you're doing," Melanie pleaded. "There has to be another way." But as Alexander turned and caught my eye from across the cathedral, the intensity of his gaze making my breath catch, I wasn't sure there was. I straightened my shoulders and walked back toward him, the torn hem of my second-hand wedding dress dragging slightly on the marble floor. As I approached, I noticed how the priest seemed simultaneously intimidated and fascinated by Alexander. "Have you reached a decision?" Alexander asked, his voice calm as though we were discussing a business proposal rather than the rest of our lives. "I need to understand something first," I said, finding resolve in the dire circumstances. "Why marriage? If this is about punishing Greg, there are simpler ways." A flicker of appreciation crossed his features. "Intelligent question," he said. "This isn't about punishing Greg, though that's an enjoyable side benefit. This is about what I want." "And what exactly do you want?" I asked, my voice barely steady. Alexander's dark eyes held mine. "A wife, a family. You." He glanced at Lily. "Both of you." A chill ran through me at the simple declaration. "But why me? There must be dozens of women who would—" "I don't want dozens of women," he cut in smoothly. "I want you. I've watched you for months, Emma. Your loyalty, your strength, your devotion to your daughter. The way you work yourself to exhaustion rather than compromise your principles. These qualities are rare." The revelation that he'd been observing me, studying my life without my knowledge, should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a disturbing ripple of something else. Something that might have been flattery in any other circumstance. "That's not normal," I said. "That's stalking." "That's due diligence," he corrected, unperturbed. "I don't enter into arrangements lightly." "Arrangements," I repeated bitterly. "Not marriages. Arrangements." His mouth curved into the barest hint of a smile. "Would you prefer I pretend this is a love match? I respect you too much for such fiction. This is an arrangement that benefits us both. I gain a wife with qualities I admire. You and your daughter gain protection, security, and a future far better than anything you could provide alone." His blunt honesty struck me more powerfully than any romantic declaration could have. After months of Greg's empty promises and ultimate betrayal, there was something almost refreshing about Alexander's straightforward approach. "If I agree," I said carefully, "I have conditions." He raised an eyebrow, amusement playing at the edges of his expression. "I'm listening." "Lily comes first, always. Her well-being, her happiness, her future. Those are non-negotiable." He nodded once, decisively. "Agreed. I want to finish my degree. I've put it off too long for Lily, and I—" "Of course," he interrupted. "I insist on it. Education is valuable." I blinked, caught off guard by his ready acceptance. "And I want to know what you do, the truth. No more secrets or surprises." At this, his expression grew more guarded. "You understand that some aspects of my business require discretion." "I'm not asking for confidential details," I clarified. "I'm asking to know who I'm marrying, what world I'm stepping into. I need to know if I'm putting Lily in danger." Alexander considered me for a long moment, his dark gaze assessing. Finally, he inclined his head slightly. "You deserve that much. We'll discuss it. Not here, but soon." I took a deep breath, my mind racing through the limited options before me. Refuse and face the consequences of Greg's theft. Accept and enter into a marriage with a powerful, dangerous man I knew almost nothing about. "One more thing," I said, my voice stronger now. "This may be an arrangement, but if we're going to be married, I won't be treated like a possession or a trophy. I expect respect." Something like admiration flickered in his eyes. "I would expect nothing less from the woman I choose as my wife." Wife. The word echoed strangely in my head. "Do we have a deal, Emma?" he asked, extending his hand toward me. I stared at his outstretched palm. Strong, well-manicured, with a thin scar running across the knuckles. This hand could protect us or destroy us. This decision could save us or doom us. Yes, I said, placing my trembling hand in his. We have a deal. His fingers closed around mine, warm and surprisingly gentle. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through me, a current of awareness that had nothing to do with fear. Excellent, he said softly. Then, turning to the priest who had been watching our exchange with poorly concealed fascination, he added, Father, we're ready to proceed with the ceremony. The next 30 minutes unfolded like a surreal dream. The whispers from the pews grew to a steady murmur as Alexander's men ushered Greg's confused relatives to one side, making room for the impromptu ceremony. My own small family, just Melanie, my elderly aunt, and 2 cousins, huddled together in shock as I took my place at the altar beside a man who was, for all intents and purposes, still a stranger. Lily, delighted that the wedding was proceeding after all, skipped back up the aisle, scattering her flower petals with renewed enthusiasm. When she reached us, Alexander surprised me by kneeling down to her level again. May I have your permission to marry your mother? He asked her solemnly. Lily tilted her head, studying him with the direct, unfiltered gaze of childhood. Will you make her cry like Greg did? A shadow passed over Alexander's features. No, Malishka, I won't make her cry. Promise? She pressed, with all the seriousness a 5-year-old could muster. I promise, he said, and I was startled by the sincerity in his voice. Lily considered this for a moment, then nodded. Okay. But you have to come to my tea parties. Greg never did. A genuine smile transformed Alexander's face, softening the hard edges and revealing a dimple in his left cheek. It would be my honor to attend your tea parties. The exchange was so unexpected, so strangely normal amid the absurdity of the situation, that I felt a hysterical laugh bubble up in my throat. I swallowed it down as Alexander rose to his feet. Shall we? He asked, gesturing to the priest. The ceremony itself was brief and surreal. I spoke my vows in a voice that sounded distant to my own ears, promising to honor and cherish a man whose full name I had learned just minutes ago. When Alexander spoke his vows, however, his voice rang clear and confident through the cathedral, as if he were making proclamations he fully intended to keep. The ring he produced, not Greg's ring, but a new one that one of his men had somehow procured in the brief interim, was a simple platinum band with a single, flawless diamond that caught the light filtering through the stained glass windows. It slipped onto my finger with surprising ease, as though it had been made for me. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the priest declared, his voice tinged with the same bewilderment that permeated the cathedral. You may kiss the bride. I froze. Somehow, in the whirlwind of the past hour, I had not considered this inevitable moment. Alexander's dark eyes met mine, a question in them despite his commanding presence. He was waiting for my permission. With the slightest nod, I consented. His hand rose to cup my cheek, surprisingly gentle for a man who radiated such power. Then his lips touched mine, light at first, a mere brush of contact that somehow managed to send a shiver down my spine. The kiss deepened slightly, his mouth firm and confident against mine, before he pulled away. It lasted only seconds, yet I felt oddly breathless. Mrs. Volkov, he said softly, his accent wrapping around the name in a way that made it sound like something precious. Reality crashed back as applause scattered awkwardly through the cathedral, mostly from Alexander's men, who seemed to be following some predetermined protocol. My sister stood rigid with shock. Lily clapped delightedly, unaware of the gravity of what had just transpired. What happens now? I whispered, suddenly terrified of the answer. Now, he said, offering his arm. We celebrate. The reception is still arranged, is it not? I nodded numbly. The reception at the small hotel ballroom down the street, another expense I could barely afford, but had insisted on for Lily's sake. She had been so excited about the party, the dancing, the cake. Perfect, Alexander said, as if reading my thoughts. Lily should have her party. We processed down the aisle, not as the couple I had imagined, but as something far more complicated. Alexander's men fell into formation around us, creating a protective bubble that separated us from the confused, frightened guests. Outside the cathedral, a line of black SUVs with tinted windows waited. The one at the front was longer than the others, clearly a luxury vehicle. A driver stepped forward to open the door for us. "Your car wasn't suitable," Alexander explained, noting my confusion. I took the liberty of arranging proper transportation. The interior was cream leather and smelled of new car and that same subtle cologne I had detected earlier. Lily scrambled in excitedly, immediately pressing buttons on the armrest until colored lights illuminated the ceiling. "Cool!" she exclaimed, her face transformed with delight. Alexander helped me into the vehicle, his hand steady at the small of my back. I sank into the soft leather, my legs suddenly too weak to support me, as the full weight of what I had done crashed down. I had married a stranger, a dangerous man with bodyguards and unnamed business dealings. A man who had admitted to watching me for months. A man who had essentially blackmailed me into marriage at the altar where I'd just been abandoned. And yet, as he slid in beside me, his presence commanding even in the spacious interior of the vehicle, I couldn't ignore the strange sense of security that had replaced the crushing humiliation of Greg's rejection. "You're pale," Alexander observed, his dark eyes studying my face. "Are you unwell?" "Just processing," I managed to say. He nodded, then pressed a button on the armrest. A compartment opened, revealing a crystal decanter. Brandy. It might help with the shock. I shook my head, glancing meaningfully at Lily, who was now happily exploring every feature of the luxury vehicle. "Of course," he said, closing the compartment. Instead, he called to the driver. "Pavel, water for Mrs. Volkov and—" He turned to Lily. "What would you like to drink, Malishka?" "Apple juice," she said immediately, bouncing on the seat. "With a straw." "Apple juice with a straw," Alexander repeated, his serious tone at odds with the childish request. Somehow, a bottle of water and a carton of apple juice complete with straw appeared within seconds. As we pulled away from the cathedral, I stared out the window at the life I was leaving behind. The modest apartment Lily and I had shared, the community college where I took night classes, the diner where I worked morning shifts, all of it suddenly felt like part of a different existence. "What's happening at the reception?" I asked, trying to ground myself in practical concerns. "Most of those people are Greg's family and friends. They must be confused, afraid." Alexander's expression darkened slightly at the mention of Greg. "My men will explain that the celebration is continuing, but with a change in circumstances. Those who wish to leave may do so. Those who stay will be treated well." The casual way he spoke of controlling an entire wedding reception sent another chill through me. What kind of power did this man wield? "And after the reception?" I asked, dreading the answer but needing to know. His gaze met mine, steady and direct. "After, you and Lily will come home with me. To your new home." Home. The word should have been comforting, but instead it twisted my stomach into knots. "Don't look so frightened, Emma," he said, his voice softening. "I meant what I said. I won't make you cry." Lily, oblivious to the tension between us, piped up from her seat. "Is your house big? Do you have a pool? Greg promised me a pool, but he never showed it to me." Alexander's expression softened as he turned to my daughter. "Yes, Malishka, there is a pool and a garden, and a room that can be yours, decorated however you like." Her eyes widened. "Really? Can it be purple?" "Purple is my favorite color. Purple it shall be," he agreed, with a solemnity that might have been comical in any other circumstance. I watched their interaction with a mixture of fear and fascination. This dangerous man who had forced me into marriage was treating my daughter with a gentleness I had not expected. It didn't erase the coercion or the threats, but it complicated the simple villain narrative I had begun constructing in my mind. As the car glided smoothly toward the hotel where our reception waited, I gazed down at the platinum ring now adorning my finger, the tangible symbol of the bargain I had struck. For better or worse, I was now Emma Volkov, wife to a man I didn't know and couldn't trust, but who had, in his own words, had his eye on me for some time. The thought should have terrified me completely. Instead, beneath the fear and uncertainty, I felt a treacherous flicker of something else, Curiosity, perhaps, or something more dangerous still. "We've arrived," Alexander announced as the car pulled up to the hotel entrance. He studied my face. "Are you ready, Mrs. Volkov?" No, I thought. I would never be ready for this new reality. But for Lily's sake, I nodded and allowed him to take my hand as the car door opened onto my new life. The hotel ballroom looked exactly as I had planned it with Greg months ago. White roses and baby's breath arrangements on each table, twinkling fairy lights draped from the ceiling, a small dance floor in the center. Yet everything felt fundamentally altered, as if I had stepped into a parallel universe where the familiar had become strange and unsettling. Alexander's men had arrived ahead of us, seamlessly taking control of the venue. They positioned themselves strategically around the perimeter, their dark suits and vigilant postures creating an atmosphere that was part celebration, part security operation. Most of Greg's relatives had chosen to leave, their confusion and fear palpable as they hurried past us at the entrance. My small circle of friends and family remained, clustered together near the cake table, their expressions a mixture of concern and bewilderment. "Emma!" Rachel rushed forward as we entered, her eyes darting nervously to Alexander. "Are you okay? What's happening?" Before I could respond, Alexander placed his hand lightly on the small of my back, a gesture that was somehow both protective and possessive. "Mrs. Lawson," he addressed Rachel with perfect politeness, though I noticed he had effortlessly recalled her name without introduction. "I understand you must have questions. Rest assured, Emma is perfectly safe. Today has simply taken an unexpected turn." "An unexpected turn?" Rachel repeated incredulously. "You forced her to marry you at the altar." I felt Alexander stiffen beside me, the subtle shift in his posture radiating a warning that made me instinctively step between them. "Rachel, please," I said quietly. "Not here. Not in front of Lily." My daughter had already spotted the 3-tiered wedding cake and was tugging at Alexander's sleeve, apparently having decided that he was now the authority figure to petition for sweets. "Can I have cake now?" she asked, completely oblivious to the tension surrounding her. "You promised there would be cake." To my surprise, Alexander knelt down to her level once again, his movement causing his security detail to shift position slightly. "So I did," he said, his severe expression softening. "But first, I believe there should be a proper introduction. Lily, from today, I am your—" He paused, glancing up at me with an unexpected flicker of uncertainty. "Stepfather," I supplied, the word feeling foreign on my tongue. "Stepfather," he repeated, returning his attention to Lily. "You may call me Alex." Lily considered this with solemn deliberation, her small brow furrowed in concentration. "Does that mean you're my new daddy now?" The question hung in the air, loaded with implications that made my heart constrict painfully. Before I could intervene, Alexander answered with surprising gentleness. "I would be honored to be your father figure, Malishka," he said. "But I understand that position must be earned. For now, let's say I am your mother's husband and your protector. The rest will come with time and trust." His response startled me with its sensitivity and insight. I had expected him to simply assume the role, to command Lily's affection as he seemed to command everything else around him. "Okay," Lily decided, accepting his answer with the simple adaptability of childhood. "Can we have cake now, Alex?" A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "First a small meal, then cake. That's the proper order. But your mother would agree, I think." Lily looked to me for support, but I nodded, still processing the strange dynamic unfolding before me. "Alex is right, honey. Dinner first, then cake." The use of his shortened name felt intimate in a way that unsettled me, yet it slipped out naturally. Alexander's eyes met mine, a flash of satisfaction in their dark depths, before he stood and signaled to the waiting catering staff. "Please serve the meal," he instructed, his authoritative tone returning, "and bring champagne for the toast." The reception proceeded with surreal normalcy. We sat at the head table, Lily between us, chattering happily about her flower girl dress and the do-over wedding, as she called it. Melanie and my few other guests maintained a wary distance, occasionally shooting me concerned glances that I answered with reassuring smiles I didn't feel. Halfway through the meal, Alexander leaned close to me, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "Your sister wants to speak with you alone. I suggest the ladies' room in 5 minutes. My men will ensure privacy." I turned to him, startled. "How did you—" "She's been signaling you for the past 10 minutes, he said simply. "And she's frightened for you, a reasonable concern, given the circumstances." The fact that he had noticed, and more surprisingly, that he was facilitating the conversation, confused me. "You don't mind?" A faint smile crossed his lips. "I'm not a jailer, Emma. You're my wife, not my prisoner." The distinction felt thinner than his words suggested, but I nodded gratefully. "Thank you." 5 minutes later, I slipped away from the table and met Melanie in the ornate hotel restroom. One of Alexander's men stood outside the door, ensuring we weren't disturbed. The moment the door closed behind us, Melanie gripped my arms, her face pale with worry. "Emma, what the hell is happening? Who is this man? Are you being threatened?" "It's complicated, Mel," I said, checking the stalls to ensure we were truly alone. "Alexander is powerful, connected. Greg stole from him and ran." "So what? That's not your problem. You can't just marry a criminal because your ex was a thief." "He's not." I paused, realizing I had no idea whether Alexander was a criminal or not. The presence of armed guards and his casual references to debts and threats certainly suggested something outside the law. "I don't know what he is exactly, but I know he could hurt a lot of people if I had refused." "Including you?" Melanie pressed, her eyes searching mine. I hesitated. Strangely, "I don't think so. He seems protective, at least of me and Lily." "Emma, listen to yourself. This is Stockholm Syndrome before you've even been kidnapped." She ran a hand through her hair in frustration. "I'm calling the police as soon as we leave here." Fear shot through me. "No. Mel, you can't. You don't understand what you'd be dealing with. These men, they're not—" I lowered my voice further. "They're not the kind of people the local police can handle. You just put yourself in danger." "So what, you're just going to go home with him? Live as his wife? Share his bed?" Her voice broke on the last words, the reality of my situation crashing down around us both. The thought of physical intimacy with Alexander sent an unexpected heat through me, not entirely from fear. I pushed the feeling aside, focusing on the practical. "I don't have a choice right now," I said firmly. "I need to protect Lily, and this is the way to do it. He's promised us safety, security. Lily can have the life I could never give her on my own." Melanie's eyes filled with tears. "At what cost, Emma? What will he expect from you?" The question hung between us, unanswered, as the door to the restroom swung open. One of Alexander's men stood in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. "Mrs. Volkov, your husband requests your presence for the cake cutting." Mrs. Volkov. The name still felt foreign, like a costume I had put on rather than an identity. I squeezed Melanie's hand. "It's going to be okay. Trust me." "I trust you," she whispered. "It's him I don't trust." We returned to the reception, where Alexander waited beside the wedding cake, Lily bouncing excitedly at his side. As I approached, I noticed that he had removed his suit jacket, revealing a crisp white shirt and shoulder holster with what was unmistakably a handgun. The casual display of weaponry in the middle of a wedding reception should have horrified me, yet it seemed perfectly in keeping with the day's surreal events. "Everything all right?" he asked as I rejoined them, his eyes assessing my expression with that now familiar intensity. "Yes," I said, aware of Melanie watching us closely. "Just sister talk." He nodded, clearly not believing the simplification but accepting it nonetheless. "Lily has been very patient waiting for cake," he said, changing the subject. "She tells me chocolate is her favorite." "It is," I confirmed, surprised he had taken the time to learn such a detail about my daughter during my brief absence. Lily tugged at my dress. "Can we cut the cake now, Mommy, please?" The normalcy of her request amid the strangeness of the day nearly broke me. This was supposed to be a happy occasion. My wedding day, the beginning of a stable family life for Lily. Instead, It had become something I couldn't even define. "Of course, sweetheart," I managed, forcing a smile. The cake-cutting ceremony was a strange facsimile of tradition. Alexander's hand covered mine as we sliced through the bottom tier together, his touch warm and steady against my trembling fingers. When it came time to feed each other a piece, another tradition I had insisted on for Lily's sake, I hesitated. Alexander seemed to sense my reluctance. With a subtlety I was beginning to recognize as characteristic, he adjusted the moment, taking a small bite from the piece I offered, then immediately turning to offer a bite to Lily instead of to me. She giggled with delight, chocolate frosting smearing across her cheek as she bit into the cake. "Your turn, Mommy," she insisted, and I found myself accepting a small piece from Alexander's fingers, the casual intimacy of the gesture sending another unwelcome ripple of awareness through me. As the cake was distributed to the remaining guests, Alexander led me to the small dance floor, his intent clear. "I don't think I can dance," I whispered, panic rising at the thought of being held in his arms while everyone watched. "We must," he said simply. "It's expected. Just follow my lead." Before I could protest further, his arm slipped around my waist, drawing me against him with gentle but insistent pressure. His other hand clasped mine, and we began moving to the soft music the hired DJ had started playing. "You're afraid," he observed, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "Of course I'm afraid," I replied, finding a thread of defiance beneath the fear. I just married a complete stranger who threatened Greg's family if I refused. Should I be relaxed? To my surprise, a smile tugged at his lips. "No. Your fear is reasonable, but perhaps misplaced." "What does that mean?" His eyes held mine as we moved across the floor. "It means I have no intention of harming you or Lily. Quite the opposite. Then why force this marriage? Why not just let me go when Greg ran?" The questions had been burning inside me since the moment he appeared in the cathedral. Alexander was quiet for a moment, his steps never faltering as he guided me in a simple waltz. "I told you before, I've had my eye on you for some time." "That doesn't explain anything," I pressed, emboldened by the privacy of our conversation amid the music. "Why me? I'm nobody special." His hand tightened slightly at my waist. "You underestimate yourself, Emma. Your resilience, your loyalty, your fierce protection of your daughter despite overwhelming odds." His gaze intensified. "These qualities are valuable to me." "Valuable," I repeated. "Like an asset, like a partner," he corrected. "I have wealth, power, influence, but these things mean little without someone worthy to share them with, someone who understands sacrifice and loyalty." The explanation was both flattering and disturbing. "So you, what? Watched me from afar and decided I would make a suitable wife?" "In essence, yes," he admitted without a trace of embarrassment. "Though the opportunity to claim you arose unexpectedly, Greg's theft accelerated my timeline." "Claim me," I echoed, the possessive language sending a shiver down my spine. "I'm not a possession, Alexander. Alex," he corrected gently. "And no, you're not a possession. You're something far more precious. A woman who earned my respect before you even knew I existed." Before I could respond to this unsettling declaration, the music shifted to a livelier tune, and Lily bounded onto the dance floor, breaking the tension of the moment. "Dance with me too," she demanded, tugging at Alexander's pant leg. Without hesitation, he released me and scooped Lily up, settling her on his hip with surprising ease. "As the lady commands," he said, his severe expression transforming as he spun her around, eliciting a squeal of delight. I watched them, my emotions a tangled mess of fear, confusion, and something dangerously close to hope. The sight of my daughter so readily accepting this stranger, laughing in his arms as though she'd known him forever, both alarmed and comforted me. Children often sensed things adults missed. Was Lily's easy acceptance a sign that Alexander could be trusted, at least where she was concerned? The reception wound down as evening fell. Lily, exhausted from excitement and sugar, had fallen asleep in one of the plush chairs, her flower crown askew on her tousled hair. The few remaining guests had departed, leaving only Alexander's men stationed around the ballroom. "It's time to go," Alexander said, approaching me where I stood gazing out the window at the darkening sky. Reality crashed back with his words. Go where? To his home? His bed? The thought sent a rush of panic through me. I need to get our things from my apartment, I said, grasping at practicalities to delay the inevitable. Lily's favorite stuffed animal, her medications, my... Already taken care of, he interrupted smoothly. While we were at the reception, my people packed everything of importance from your apartment. It's being delivered to our home as we speak. The casual invasion of privacy stunned me. You had people go through my things? Without my permission? Alexander studied my face, seeming to realize he had overstepped. I thought it would be helpful. One less worry for you after an already difficult day. It's not helpful. It's invasive, I said, finding my voice despite my fear. You can't just rearrange my life without consulting me. Instead of anger at my defiance, I saw what appeared to be genuine regret cross his features. You're right, he conceded, surprising me. I apologize. I'm unaccustomed to considering others' perspectives in such matters. The admission, coupled with the apology, threw me off balance. I had expected commands, not contrition. In the future, he continued, I will consult you about decisions that affect you and Lily directly. You have my word. I nodded, not entirely trusting the promise, but appreciating the gesture nonetheless. Now, he said, his tone gentle but firm. It's time to take Lily home. She needs a proper bed. He moved to where Lily slept and carefully lifted her into his arms, cradling her against his chest with a tenderness that continued to confound me. She stirred slightly, then nestled against him, her small hand clutching his shirt collar. The sight stirred something protective in me, a fierce warning that vibrated through my bones. If you ever hurt her, I began, my voice low and steady. I would die first, he interrupted, his tone leaving no room for doubt. I protect what's mine, Emma, always. The possessive declaration should have angered me, but instead it offered a strange reassurance. Whatever Alexander's motivations for this forced marriage, Lily's safety seemed genuinely important to him. We exited the hotel to find the same black SUV waiting at the curb. The driver opened the door as we approached, and Alexander carefully placed Lily in a child seat that hadn't been there during our earlier journey, another detail he had arranged without my knowledge. As we pulled away from the hotel, leaving behind the last vestiges of the life I had planned with Greg, I stared out the window at the familiar streets of my small town. We drove past the diner where I had worked morning shifts, past the community college where I took night classes, past the park where I brought Lily to play when I could afford an afternoon off. Where exactly are we going? I asked, suddenly realizing I had no idea where Alexander lived. Home, he said simply. It's about an hour's drive. You should rest if you can. Today has been taxing for you. An hour would take us well beyond the town limits, into the wealthy suburbs that had always seemed like another world to me. I leaned my head against the cool window, exhaustion settling into my bones as the events of the day caught up with me. Despite my intention to remain vigilant, I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, Alexander was gently shaking my shoulder. We've arrived, Emma, he said softly. I blinked awake, disoriented, to find we had stopped before a set of imposing iron gates. As they swung open silently, the SUV proceeded up a long, winding driveway flanked by perfectly manicured hedges. In the darkness, I could make out the silhouette of what appeared to be a massive house. No, not a house, an estate, looming ahead of us. This is where you live? I asked, my voice small in the quiet car. This is where we live, Alexander corrected, as the vehicle came to a stop before a grand entrance. Welcome home, Mrs. Volkov. As the driver opened the door and I stepped out into my new life, I couldn't help but wonder if I had traded one prison for another, the prison of poverty and struggle for the gilded cage of a dangerous man's protection. Only time would tell which was worse. Alexander lifted the still sleeping Lily from her seat, cradling her protectively against his chest. Follow me, he said quietly. I'll show you to your rooms. Your rooms. Plural. The implication wasn't lost on me. Perhaps this night, at least, I would have a reprieve from the more intimate aspects of this arranged marriage. The thought brought both relief and a confusing pang of something like disappointment that I quickly suppressed. As we stepped through the massive front doors into a foyer larger than my entire apartment, I took a deep breath and straightened my shoulders. Whatever came next, I would face it with the same strength and determination that had gotten Lily and me through the past 5 years. I had survived abandonment, poverty, and humiliation. I could survive becoming Mrs. Alexander Volkov. I had to. For Lily. For myself. For whatever future might be possible in this strange new world I had entered. The interior of Alexander's home, our home now, I reminded myself, was a study in tasteful opulence. Gleaming marble floors stretched across the foyer, reflecting the soft light from a crystal chandelier that hung like a constellation above us. The walls were adorned with artwork that even my untrained eye recognized as valuable, and the furniture appeared to be antique, each piece carefully selected for both beauty and function. "The staff has retired for the evening," Alexander said quietly as he led me up a sweeping staircase, still carrying the sleeping Lily. "You'll meet them tomorrow. Staff." Of course there would be staff in a house this size. Another reminder of how dramatically my life had changed in the span of a single day. At the top of the stairs, we turned down a long hallway lined with doors. Alexander stopped before one painted a soft lavender color and pushed it open with his shoulder, revealing a child's bedroom that took my breath away. The room was spacious and airy, with a canopied bed centered on one wall and a window seat overlooking what appeared to be extensive gardens. Stuffed animals were arranged on shelves, and a small table with a child-sized tea set occupied one corner. Everything was done in shades of purple, Lily's favorite color. "How did you—" I began, then stopped, remembering his earlier admission that he had been watching us for months. The thought should have disturbed me more than it did. Alexander moved to the bed, gently laying Lily down on the plush comforter. With unexpected tenderness, he removed her shoes and the askew flower crown before pulling a blanket over her small form. "Her things will be unpacked tomorrow," he whispered. "But I wanted her to have a proper room ready tonight." I stood frozen in the doorway, trying to reconcile this gentle consideration with the man who had essentially blackmailed me into marriage hours earlier. The contradiction was becoming a pattern I couldn't quite unravel. "Thank you," I said finally. Because regardless of his motives, the care he had taken to make Lily comfortable was undeniable. He nodded once, then straightened and moved past me into the hallway, gesturing for me to follow. 2 doors down, he opened another room. "Your bedroom," he said simply. Relief flooded through me at the confirmation that we would not be sharing a room, at least not immediately. The space was elegant and feminine without being frilly. A large 4-poster bed with cream-colored linens, a writing desk by the window, a comfortable reading chair in one corner. Like Lily's room, it seemed designed specifically for its occupant. "My room is connected through that door," Alexander added, indicating a door on the far wall. "It remains unlocked, but I assure you, I will not enter without your invitation." The statement was both reassuring and unsettling, a promise of privacy that nevertheless acknowledged the eventual expectation of intimacy. I nodded, not trusting myself to respond verbally. "Your things should arrive within the hour," he continued, moving to a closet and opening it to reveal several garments already hanging inside. In the meantime, I took the liberty of providing some essentials. "I hope they meet with your approval." I stepped forward to examine the clothes. Simple but clearly expensive items in my size, from jeans and sweaters to a few dresses and nightgowns. Tags still attached to most of them. "How do you know my size?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I pay attention to details, Emma. It's both a professional necessity and a personal inclination." Before I could respond to this cryptic statement, he moved toward the door. "The bathroom is through there," he said, indicating another door opposite the closet. "You'll find everything you need. If you require anything else, there's an intercom by the bed. Just press the button and ask." He paused at the threshold, his dark eyes studying me with that now familiar intensity. "I imagine you have questions. Many of them. We will talk tomorrow, when you've had time to rest and process today's events." "Wait," I said, as he turned to leave. "You promised to tell me what you do, who you are. I need to know what world I've brought my daughter into. Alexander hesitated, then nodded slightly. A fair request. He stepped back into the room, closing the door behind him. What do you think I do, Emma? The directness of the question caught me off guard. I don't know. Something illegal, obviously. The men, the guns, the threats. You're some kind of criminal. A simplistic assessment, but not inaccurate, he acknowledged, his expression neutral. I am what some would call a businessman with varied interests. Others might use the term organization. You're in the Mafia, I stated flatly, tired of euphemisms. Instead of denying it or becoming angry, he simply inclined his head. The term is somewhat outdated and Hollywood-influenced, but yes, I lead what you would call a crime syndicate. My family has controlled certain operations in this region for 3 generations. The calm admission sent a chill through me, even though I had already suspected as much. What kind of operations? Various enterprises, he replied carefully. Some legitimate, others less so. Import, export businesses, real estate, construction, protection services, gambling, loan facilitation. I noted the careful language, protection instead of extortion, loan facilitation instead of loan sharking. Do you hurt people? His expression hardened slightly. When necessary. I don't take pleasure in violence, Emma. But in my world, it is sometimes unavoidable. I prefer negotiation and mutual benefit where possible. Like our marriage, I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Our situation is unique, he conceded. But I did not lie earlier. I have been observing you for some time, admiring your strength and resilience. Greg's theft provided an opportunity I might not have had otherwise. So, if Greg hadn't stolen from you, what would you have done? Just watched me indefinitely from afar like some kind of stalker? A flicker of amusement crossed his features. No. I would have found another way to approach you, perhaps a more conventional courtship. Though I doubt you would have given me a second glance under normal circumstances. He was right about that. A single mother working 2 jobs and taking night classes had little time for dating, especially with men who exuded danger the way Alexander did. Is Lily in danger? I asked, voicing my greatest fear. Being associated with you? His expression grew serious again. No, quite the opposite. As my wife and stepdaughter, you both enjoy the highest level of protection my organization can provide. No one would dare harm what belongs to me. There was that possessive language again, sending conflicting signals of security and constraint through me. And if I had refused to marry you, would you really have gone after Greg's family? Alexander was quiet for a moment, his dark eyes unreadable. I would have recovered my money one way or another, he said finally. My methods might have been less gentle without your cooperation. The admission was chilling in its honesty. So I really didn't have a choice. We always have choices, Emma. Rarely are they as clear-cut as we might wish. He moved toward the door again. Rest now. Tomorrow will bring enough new challenges without adding exhaustion to your burden. As he reached for the handle, I called after him. One more question. He paused, looking back at me with a raised eyebrow. Why did you learn Lily's favorite color? Why prepare her room before you even knew if I would agree? Why take that time for a child you've never met? Something shifted in his expression. A softening around the eyes. A barely perceptible vulnerability that I hadn't seen before. Children deserve care and protection, he said simply. Always. Regardless of circumstance. And Lily, she is part of you. That makes her important. With that cryptic statement, he left, closing the door softly behind him and leaving me alone in my new bedroom, in my new life, with more questions than answers. I stood motionless for several minutes, trying to process everything that had happened since I woke up that morning, excited and nervous about marrying Greg. Now, less than 24 hours later, I was in the home of a crime boss who had forced me into marriage, yet who had also taken the time to prepare a purple bedroom for my daughter. Moving on autopilot, I went to check on Lily in her new room. She slept peacefully, one arm wrapped around a stuffed unicorn I didn't recognize, another gift from Alexander, no doubt. Seeing her comfortable and secure, despite the strange surroundings, eased some of the tension in my chest. Back in my own room, I went to the bathroom Alexander had indicated and found it to be a marble-tiled sanctuary larger than the entire bathroom in our old apartment. The shower alone could have fit 4 people, and the soaking tub beneath the window looked deep enough to swim in. Every toiletry I could possibly need was arranged neatly on the counter, including high-end brands I had only ever seen in magazines. I turned on the shower, adjusting the multiple jets until the water temperature was perfect, then stepped under the spray, letting the day's tension begin to wash away. As the hot water cascaded over me, I allowed myself to cry for the first time since Greg's betrayal. Not just for the humiliation of being abandoned at the altar, but for the loss of the simple, honest life I had thought we would build together. By the time I emerged from the shower, wrapped in a plush towel that felt like a cloud against my skin, a soft knock sounded at the bedroom door. "Mrs. Volkov?" A female voice called. "I have your belongings from your former residence." Former residence. Such a clinical term for the home where Lily had taken her first steps, where we had celebrated birthdays and Christmases, where we had built a life despite all the struggles. "Just a moment," I called back, quickly pulling on one of the nightgowns Alexander had provided, a simple knee-length garment in soft blue cotton, far more modest than I had feared. I opened the door to find a young woman in a neat black uniform, standing beside several suitcases and boxes. "Good evening, Mrs. Volkov," she said with a slight bow of her head. "I'm Nadia. Mr. Volkov assigned me as your personal assistant. These are the items from your apartment. Would you like me to unpack them now, or would you prefer to do it yourself tomorrow?" The formality of the interaction was jarring. I had never had anyone unpack for me in my life. "I'll do it myself, thank you," I said, stepping aside to allow her to bring the luggage into the room. "Very well. Is there anything you need before I retire for the evening? A late meal, perhaps? Something to help you sleep?" The thoughtfulness of the offer reminded me that I hadn't eaten much at the reception, too overwhelmed by the day's events to have an appetite. "Maybe some tea?" I suggested. "And possibly a sandwich? I find I'm hungry after all." "Of course," Nadia nodded. "I'll return shortly. Please make yourself comfortable." After she left, I began opening the suitcases, needing something familiar to ground me in this surreal new reality. My clothes looked shabby and worn compared to the new items Alexander had provided, but they were mine, chosen with my own taste, purchased with my own hard-earned money. I unpacked them carefully, hanging them in the spacious closet alongside their more expensive counterparts. In one box, I found Lily's favorite stuffed bear, Mr. Buttons, along with her asthma medications and the photo album we had made together last Christmas. In another, I discovered my textbooks from the community college courses I had been taking in nursing, a career path I had chosen for its stability and potential to support Lily better than my current jobs. Would Alexander expect me to give up my education now? He had agreed to my condition about finishing my degree, but how would that work in practice? Would I be allowed to leave this gilded prison to attend classes, or would he insist on private tutors, keeping me isolated within his world? Nadia returned with a tray bearing a pot of chamomile tea, a sandwich cut into neat triangles, and a small plate of cookies. "Will there be anything else, Mrs. Volkov?" "No, this is perfect." "Thank you, Nadia." I hesitated, then asked, "How long have you worked for my husband?" Something flickered in her eyes, respect, perhaps, or fear. 5 years, Mrs. Volkov. The Volkov family has employed mine for generations. Generations. The casual reference to Alexander's family legacy in this world of power and criminal enterprise reminded me again of how little I knew about the man I had married. "And is he a good employer?" I asked carefully. Nadia's expression remained carefully neutral. "Mr. Volkov is fair and generous to those who serve him loyally. He protects his own." She paused, then added with quiet emphasis, "You have nothing to fear from him, Mrs. Volkov. He has spoken of you with respect." The statement was clearly meant to reassure me, though it raised more questions about what Alexander might have told his staff about our arrangement. "Thank you, Nadia. Good night." After she left, I sat at the small table by the window, eating the sandwich, roast beef with horseradish on fresh bread, perfectly prepared, and sipping the chamomile tea as I gazed out at the moonlit grounds of the estate. The gardens stretched into the darkness, ending at what appeared to be a stone wall surrounding the property. Beyond that, I could see the twinkling lights of the city in the distance. So close, yet so far. Could I leave if I wanted to, pack up Lily and run, or were we effectively prisoners here, despite Alexander's assurances to the contrary? As I contemplated my limited options, a soft sound from the hallway caught my attention. Moving to the door, I opened it to find Lily standing there in her flower girl dress, looking disoriented and frightened. "Mommy?" she whimpered. "Where are we?" I woke up in a strange room. I knelt down and gathered her into my arms. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're in our new home now. Remember Alex? From the wedding? This is his house, and we live here now." She rubbed her eyes sleepily. "Is he my new daddy now?" The innocent question twisted my heart. "He's my husband now," I said carefully, "and he wants to take care of us, but relationships take time to build, Lily. For now, let's just say he's Alex, okay?" She nodded, seemingly satisfied with this explanation. "My room is purple," she said, as if this fact outweighed all other considerations. Despite everything, I smiled. "Yes, it is. Would you like to sleep in here with me tonight, or go back to your new purple room?" She considered the question seriously. "Can you come tuck me in my purple room again? I like it there, but it's big and new." "Of course, sweetheart." I led her back to her bedroom, where she changed into pajamas I found in a dresser drawer. New ones, with unicorns on them, exactly her size. As I tucked her into the canopied bed, she looked around the room with sleepy wonder. "Mommy, are we rich now?" she asked innocently. The question caught me off guard. "Alex is rich," I corrected gently. "He's sharing his home with us because he loves you?" Her childish directness cut to the heart of the matter. I hesitated, unwilling to lie to my daughter, yet unable to explain the complex arrangement I had entered into. "Because he wants to take care of us," I said finally, which was at least partially true. Lily yawned, her eyelids growing heavy. "I like him," she murmured as sleep began to reclaim her. "He smells nice, and he promised me cake, and he made my room purple." Simple criteria for earning a child's trust: keeping promises, providing comfort, attending to their preferences. Alexander had somehow known exactly how to win Lily over, which was both reassuring and concerning. "Sleep tight, sweetheart," I whispered, kissing her forehead. "I love you more than anything in the whole world." "Love you too, Mommy," she mumbled, already drifting off. As I returned to my own room, I found myself standing before the door that connected my bedroom to Alexander's. He had said it remained unlocked, but that he wouldn't enter without my invitation. Did that mean I was free to enter his space? Or was the door unlocked merely so he could keep track of my movements? Curiosity warred with caution as I placed my hand on the doorknob. After a moment's hesitation, I turned it slowly, finding it unlocked as promised. I opened the door just a crack, peering through into what appeared to be a masculine counterpart to my own room. Darker colors, heavier furniture, a king-sized bed with black sheets visible in the dim light. Alexander sat at a desk in the corner, his back to the door, speaking quietly into a phone in what sounded like Russian. He wore only dress pants and a white undershirt, his shoulder holster hanging over the back of his chair, the gun clearly visible. Even in this more casual state, he radiated power and control. I started to close the door, not wanting to eavesdrop, when he said something that made me freeze. "Da ona teper moja žena," he said in Russian, then switched to English. "Yes, she is now my wife. The documents are being processed. By morning, everything will be official. Her accounts, her custody arrangement for the child, all of it transferred under my protection." My accounts? Lily's custody? Cold dread washed through me. What exactly had I agreed to when I said "I do" in that cathedral? As if sensing my presence, Alexander turned, his dark eyes finding mine through the narrow opening of the door. Instead of anger at my intrusion, I saw something that might have been approval flash across his features. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, ending the call without taking his eyes from mine. For a long moment, we simply looked at each other through the doorway, me in the borrowed nightgown, him in his partially dressed state, the power imbalance between us never more apparent than in this moment. "You should be resting," he said finally, his voice low and even. "I heard what you said," I replied, finding courage in the righteous anger beginning to burn inside me. "About my accounts, about Lily's custody, what have you done?" Instead of denying it or becoming defensive, Alexander rose from his chair and approached the doorway with measured steps. "I have secured your position and Lily's," he said calmly. "As my wife, you enjoy certain protections and privileges. Legal and financial security is part of that package. You had no right to make those changes without consulting me," I said, my voice shaking slightly but determined. "We talked about this earlier. You promised to consult me about decisions that affect Lily and me directly." A flicker of what might have been remorse crossed his features. "You're right. I should have discussed it with you first, but these arrangements were set in motion before our conversation. My legal team works efficiently." "Too efficiently," I muttered. "I want access to my own accounts, and I want to know exactly what changes you've made regarding Lily's custody." Alexander studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Fair requests. Tomorrow my lawyer will provide you with all the documentation and explain the arrangements in detail. You'll maintain control of your personal accounts, with the addition of a considerable allowance. As for Lily's custody, the changes simply establish you as having sole legal custody, with me as a legal guardian in the event of your incapacity." The euphemism wasn't lost on me. "You mean if I die or try to leave you?" His expression hardened slightly. "I mean if you are unable to care for her for any reason. It's a standard legal precaution, Emma. Nothing more sinister than that." I wasn't entirely convinced, but I was too exhausted to argue further. "We'll discuss this tomorrow with your lawyer present," I said firmly. "All of it." To my surprise, Alexander smiled. A genuine expression that transformed his severe features and reminded me again that beneath the dangerous exterior was a man, not a monster. "You're adapting quickly to your new position," he observed. "Good. I don't want a cowed wife, Emma. I want a partner who can hold her own in my world." The statement confused me. If he wanted an equal partner, why force me into marriage? Why not court me properly? Allow me to choose him freely? The contradiction was yet another piece of the puzzle that was Alexander Volkov. "Good night, Alexander," I said, beginning to close the door. "Alex," he corrected gently. "And Emma, I meant what I said to Lily. I will earn my place in your lives. I'm a patient man." As I closed the door and returned to my own bed, his words echoed in my mind: patient, determined, dangerous. Yet also, in his own way, honorable. The combination was as confusing as it was compelling. Lying in the most comfortable bed I had ever experienced, I stared at the ceiling, trying to make sense of my new reality. I had entered this arrangement believing I had no choice, that it was a sacrifice made for Lily's sake and for the protection of innocent people. But as sleep finally began to claim me, I couldn't ignore the unsettling realization that some small, treacherous part of me was curious to discover what kind of life awaited me as Mrs. Alexander Volkov. I awoke to sunlight streaming through curtains I didn't remember closing, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. The events of the previous day rushed back in a flood of memory: Greg's abandonment, Alexander's appearance, our hasty wedding, and my first night in this mansion that was now supposedly my home. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. "Mrs. Volkov?" Nadia's voice called. "I've brought breakfast and coffee. May I come in?" "Yes, please," I called back, sitting up and running a hand through my tangled hair. Nadia entered, carrying a tray laden with fresh pastries, fruit, and a steaming pot of coffee. She set it on the small table by the window, then moved to draw the curtains fully open, revealing a breathtaking view of manicured gardens stretching toward a distant tree line. "Did you sleep well, Mrs. Volkov?" she asked, pouring a cup of coffee exactly how I preferred it. Light with cream, no sugar. Another detail Alexander had somehow learned during his observation of my life. Surprisingly, yes, I admitted. The comfort of the bed had eventually lulled me into a deeper sleep than I'd expected. "Miss Lily is already awake and having breakfast in the kitchen with Mrs. Reynolds, our cook," Nadia informed me. "She seems to be adapting well. Mr. Volkov arranged for a tutor to assess her educational needs this morning, if that meets with your approval." The casual way she mentioned decisions being made about my daughter's education without my input reignited yesterday's frustration. A tutor? Without discussing it with me first? Nadia's expression remained carefully neutral. Mr. Volkov mentioned you might prefer to be consulted on such matters. He asked me to inform you that the assessment is merely preliminary, and that all educational decisions will ultimately be yours to make. The small concession, evidence that Alexander had at least acknowledged our conversation from the night before, eased my irritation slightly. Thank you, Nadia. Please tell my husband I would like to speak with him this morning, and I'd like to see Lily as soon as I've dressed. Of course, Mrs. Volkov. Mr. Volkov is currently in a meeting but asked me to inform you that he has scheduled time to speak with you at 11. His attorney will be present to address your questions about the financial and legal arrangements. She moved to the closet, opening it with practiced efficiency. Would you like assistance selecting your attire for the day? The offer was so foreign to my experience that I almost laughed. No, thank you. I can manage. Nadia nodded. Very well. If you need anything, simply press the intercom button. When you're ready to see Miss Lily, she'll be in the garden with Mrs. Reynolds and Dmitri. Dmitri? The unfamiliar name set off alarms in my head. Miss Lily's security detail, Nadia explained matter-of-factly. Mr. Volkov assigns protection to all family members, security detail, for a 5-year-old. The reminder of the world I had entered, a world where children needed armed guards, sent a chill through me despite the warm morning sunlight. After Nadia left, I ate the breakfast she'd brought, surprised by my own appetite. The pastries were still warm, the fruit perfectly ripe, the coffee rich and flavorful. Small luxuries I had rarely been able to afford in my previous life. I dressed in a pair of jeans and a simple blouse from my own wardrobe, deliberately choosing my familiar clothes over the expensive new items Alexander had provided. A small act of independence in a situation where I had precious little control. Following Nadia's directions, I made my way downstairs and through the house to the rear garden. The mansion was even more impressive by daylight. Spacious rooms decorated with tasteful luxury, artwork that looked museum-worthy, furnishings that spoke of old money and refined taste rather than gaudy new wealth. I found Lily sitting on a stone patio, happily chatting with an older woman who must have been Mrs. Reynolds. Nearby, a tall, broad-shouldered man in a dark suit stood at a discreet distance, his watchful gaze constantly scanning the surroundings. Dmitri, I presumed. "Mommy!" Lily cried when she spotted me, jumping up from her chair and running toward me. "Our house has a fountain, and Mrs. Reynolds made pancakes shaped like animals, and Dmitri showed me how to say hello in Russian." I scooped her up, holding her tightly as if to reassure myself that despite our changed circumstances, she was still my same exuberant Lily. "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart. Are you doing okay with all these new things?" She nodded enthusiastically. "I love my purple room, and Alex said I can have swimming lessons in the big pool when it gets warmer. And look." She proudly displayed a delicate silver bracelet on her tiny wrist. "Alex gave me this at breakfast. He said it's to keep me safe." I examined the bracelet more closely and noticed a small charm that looked suspiciously like a tracking device. My stomach tightened at the realization, but I forced a smile for Lily's sake. "It's very pretty, honey." "Mr. Volkov had it specially made," Dmitri spoke up, approaching us with a respectful nod. "It contains a GPS locator and a panic button. If she presses the star charm for 3 seconds, it alerts security immediately. A precaution only, Mrs. Volkov." A precaution against what? I wanted to ask, but not in front of Lily. "Thank you for looking after her, Dmitri." "It is my honor," he replied with unexpected sincerity. "Mr. Volkov has assigned me exclusively to Miss Lily's protection. I have 3 daughters of my own. I understand the precious nature of my charge." The personal detail humanized him, transforming him from a faceless security guard to a father who understood the value of what he was protecting. Another calculated move by Alexander, or genuine consideration. "Lily, would you like to show me around the garden?" I asked, needing some time alone with my daughter. "Yes, there are roses and a maze and a special playground Alex said was just for me." She tugged at my hand, eager to display all the wonders of our new home. As we walked through the garden, Dmitri maintained a respectful distance, close enough to respond if needed, but far enough to give us privacy. Lily chattered excitedly about everything she had discovered that morning. The kitchen that was bigger than our whole old apartment, the library filled with children's books, the promises Alexander had made about swimming lessons and ballet classes, and a puppy once we were settled. "You seem to like Alex," I observed carefully, watching her reaction. Lily nodded vigorously. "He's nice. And he listens when I talk, not like Greg, who was always looking at his phone. And he said I could call him Papa when I'm ready, but only if I want to. No pressure." No pressure. The exact words Alexander must have used, repeated in my daughter's innocent voice. The calculated perfection of his approach to winning Lily's trust was both impressive and unsettling. "Remember what we talked about, though," I said gently. "Getting to know new people takes time. It's okay to like Alex, but we need to build trust slowly." "I know, Mommy." That's what Alex said, too. She skipped ahead to examine a butterfly that had landed on a nearby flower, apparently untroubled by the complexities that weighed so heavily on me. At precisely 11 o'clock, Nadia found us in the garden to escort me to Alexander's study. Lily stayed behind with Mrs. Reynolds, who had planned an art project to keep her occupied during our meeting. Alexander's study reflected his personality. Powerful, elegant, with an old-world sensibility tempered by modern efficiency. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined one wall, a massive desk dominated the center of the room, and a seating area with leather chairs occupied one corner. The windows overlooked the front drive, providing a strategic view of anyone approaching the house. Alexander stood as I entered, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit that emphasized his athletic build. "Emma," he greeted me, his dark eyes taking in my deliberately casual attire without comment. "I trust you slept well?" "Well enough," I replied, taking the seat he indicated. An older man in an expensive suit sat nearby, a briefcase open on the coffee table between us. "This is Mr. Harrington, my attorney." Alexander introduced us. "He has prepared the documentation you requested regarding your accounts and Lily's custody arrangements." Mr. Harrington handed me a folder containing several legal documents. "Mrs. Volkov, I've prepared a summary of the changes for your review. As Mr. Volkov indicated, you retain control of your personal accounts, which now include a monthly allowance of $50,000 for your discretionary use." I nearly choked at the figure. $50,000? Per month? "A reasonable amount for the wife of a man in Mr. Volkov's position," the attorney replied, without a hint of irony. "Additionally, a trust has been established for Lily's education and future needs, currently funded at $5 million, with annual additions planned." $5 million. More money than I would have earned in multiple lifetimes at the diner. "As for the custody arrangements," Mr. Harrington continued, "the documents establish you as having sole legal custody of Lily, with Mr. Volkov named as legal guardian in the event of your incapacity. There is also a provision for formal adoption proceedings to begin after 1 year of marriage, should all parties agree at that time." I flipped through the documents, trying to absorb the life-altering information they contained. "And my nursing program? Will I be allowed to continue my education?" "Allowed?" Alexander interjected, a hint of surprise in his voice. "Of course. In fact, I've taken the liberty of arranging for your transfer to the university's full-time program, with all expenses covered, unless you would prefer to continue part-time at the community college." The offer was tempting. The university's nursing program was far superior to my community college courses, but the demanding schedule had been impossible while working 2 jobs to support Lily. The university would be preferable, I admitted cautiously. "Excellent. Mr. Harrington will finalize those arrangements." Alexander nodded to the attorney, who made a note in his planner. After reviewing the remaining documents, which included health insurance, life insurance, and various legal protections I barely understood, Mr. Harrington excused himself, leaving Alexander and me alone in the study. "You have more questions," Alexander observed, moving to sit across from me rather than behind his imposing desk. "Ask them freely." I chose my words carefully. "The tracking bracelet you gave Lily. Is that really necessary?" His expression remained neutral. "In my position, there are those who might seek leverage against me. Lily's safety is non-negotiable. Are we in danger because of you?" The question that had been haunting me since the moment he appeared in the cathedral. Not specifically, he replied thoughtfully. My reputation alone deters most threats, but I take no chances with those under my protection. The security measures are preventative, not reactive. And what about me? Do I get a tracking bracelet too? I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Would you wear one if I offered? No. I thought not. He leaned forward slightly. I don't seek to control your movements, Emma. You are not a prisoner here. You're free to come and go as you please, though I would ask that you accept security when you leave the estate. For your protection, not your surveillance. And if I wanted to leave permanently, take Lily and go? I held my breath after asking the question, afraid of the answer yet needing to know the boundaries of my new life. Alexander's expression darkened, a glimpse of the dangerous man beneath the polished exterior. That would be unacceptable. So I am a prisoner, just in a gilded cage. No. The single word carried the weight of absolute authority. You are my wife. Lily is now under my protection. I will not relinquish either of you. But within those parameters, you have freedom and agency. Your education, your interests, your independence in day-to-day matters, these are yours to determine. The brutal honesty of his position was almost refreshing after Greg's empty promises and eventual betrayal. Alexander made no pretense about his possessive nature or his expectations. What do you want from me, Alex? I asked softly, deliberately using his preferred name. Really? Beyond the legal documents and arrangements. What do you expect from this marriage? Something shifted in his dark eyes. A vulnerability I hadn't witnessed before. Loyalty. Respect. Eventually, perhaps, affection. He paused, choosing his words with evident care. I did not lie when I said I had been watching you for some time, Emma. Your resilience, your devotion to Lily, your determination to improve your circumstances through education rather than seeking the easy path. These qualities are rare and valuable. I want a partner who embodies them. And what about love? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Love, he repeated, as if testing the word. In my experience, love is often a weakness exploited by others, but I believe a deeper attachment can grow from respect and shared purpose. He met my gaze directly. I am not incapable of love, Emma, but I do not expect it to be given freely or quickly. The answer was more honest than I had anticipated, revealing a pragmatic view of relationships that was oddly compatible with my own hard-earned wariness after Lily's father abandoned us and Greg's ultimate betrayal. There is one more matter we should discuss, Alexander said, his tone shifting to something more businesslike. The physical aspect of our marriage. Heat rushed to my face at the direct approach. I will not press you, he interrupted smoothly. As I said last night, I am a patient man. We will share proximity through our connected rooms, meals together, public appearances as husband and wife. The rest will develop naturally, or not at all. The unexpected consideration caught me off guard. I had prepared myself for demands, not patience. Thank you, I said quietly, genuinely appreciative of this small mercy. He nodded once, then stood. I have business to attend to this afternoon, but I would like us to dine together tonight. You, me, and Lily. A proper family dinner to begin establishing routines. Family dinner. The simple domestic concept seemed incongruous with everything I knew about this dangerous, powerful man. All right, I agreed. Lily would like that. And you? He asked, studying my face with that unnerving intensity. I'm still adjusting, I answered honestly, but I appreciate your patience and your consideration for Lily's happiness. He accepted this with a slight inclination of his head. Until dinner, then. The weeks that followed established a strange new normal. Lily thrived in our new environment, her natural resilience and adaptability serving her well. She adored the tutors Alexander arranged, excelled in her new swimming lessons, and gradually began referring to him as Papa Alex, a compromise that seemed to satisfy both her desire for a father figure and my insistence on honoring the newness of our arrangement. I began the university nursing program, throwing myself into studies that had once seemed like an impossible dream. True to his word, Alexander provided security, but not surveillance, never questioning my comings and goings as long as I accepted the protection of a driver and bodyguard. Alexander himself remained an enigma, polite, considerate, even gentle with Lily, yet clearly dangerous to those who crossed him. I caught glimpses of his business dealings, hushed phone conversations in Russian, meetings with men whose deferential behavior spoke volumes about Alexander's position in the criminal hierarchy. Yet he kept the darker aspects of his world carefully separated from our daily lives, creating a bubble of normalcy within the broader context of his criminal empire. Gradually, imperceptibly, the dynamic between us shifted. Our connected rooms remained a symbol of both separation and possibility. The door between us always unlocked but rarely crossed. We developed rituals, morning coffee in the garden, family dinners with Lily, occasional late-night conversations in his study after she'd gone to bed. I found myself looking forward to these moments, drawn to his intelligence, his unexpected humor, his absolute reliability in keeping his promises. 3 months after our unconventional wedding, I returned home from a long day at the university to find Lily already asleep and Alexander waiting in the garden with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "You received your midterm results today," he said as I joined him. "Top of your class in 3 subjects. I'm proud of you." The simple praise warmed me more than it should have. "You checked my grades? I take an interest in your successes," he replied unapologetically, pouring wine into both glasses. "As I said from the beginning, your education is important." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, sipping wine and watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. The strange comfort of his presence had become familiar over the past months, the initial fear gradually replaced by a cautious trust. "I never thanked you," I said finally, breaking the silence. Alexander raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For saving me from humiliation that day in the cathedral, for giving Lily stability and opportunities I could never have provided on my own." I took another sip of wine, gathering courage. "When you appeared, I thought you were there to hurt us because of what Greg had done. Instead, you've given us a home, security, a future." "Is it so surprising that I would protect what's mine?" he asked softly. Once the possessive phrasing would have angered me. Now I understood it as his way of expressing care. "We weren't yours then," I reminded him. "You claimed us. I recognized your value," he corrected. "There's a difference." The distinction was subtle, but significant. In Alexander's world of transactions and power dynamics, seeing worth in someone was perhaps the closest equivalent to more conventional affection. "Are you happy here, Emma?" he asked suddenly, his dark eyes intent on my face. The question deserved honest consideration. "I'm content," I answered carefully. "Lily is thriving. I'm pursuing education I never thought possible. And you've been—" I searched for the right word. "Kind. Far kinder than I expected given how our arrangement began." "But not happiness," he observed, a hint of something like disappointment in his voice. "Happiness requires freedom, Alex. Real freedom, not just a longer leash." He flinched slightly at the metaphor. "You still see yourself as captive, aren't I?" I challenged gently. "You said yourself that leaving would be unacceptable." Alexander was silent for a long moment, swirling the wine in his glass thoughtfully. "What if I told you that you could leave? Take Lily and go, with my blessing and continued financial support. No tracking, no security detail. True freedom." My heart raced at the unexpected offer. "You would let us go? If that would bring you happiness," he said quietly. "Yes." I studied his face, searching for deception and finding none. "Why would you do that? After all the trouble you went to, arranging our marriage, establishing legal ties, because in these past months, I've come to want more than just your presence, Emma." His voice had softened to a near whisper. "I want your choice, your willing participation in this life we're building." The admission stunned me. This dangerous, powerful man who had orchestrated our entire relationship through coercion and calculation was now offering freedom, the one thing I had believed he would never grant. "And if I chose to stay?" I asked, my voice barely audible. His eyes held mine with that familiar intensity. Then it would be as true partners. Not captive and captor, not debtor and creditor, but husband and wife, in substance as well as name. The invitation in his words was unmistakable. In offering me freedom, he was also offering intimacy, a relationship based on choice rather than coercion. The final barrier between us removed. "I need time to think," I said, overwhelmed by the implications of his offer. "Take all the time you need," he replied. "As I've said from the beginning, I'm a patient man." That night, I lay awake in my bed, staring at the connecting door that separated our rooms, the door that had remained closed each night, despite the growing attraction between us, the door that symbolized the final choice I had yet to make. I thought of Lily's happiness, her attachment to Papa Alex that had grown naturally despite my initial reservations. I thought of the life we had built here, imperfect, complicated, but secure in ways I had never experienced before. And I thought of Alexander himself, the man who had forced me into marriage yet never forced himself upon me, the criminal with an unshakable code of honor, the dangerous man who read bedtime stories to Lily with different voices for each character. With sudden clarity, I realized that the choice had already been made, not in a single dramatic moment, but in the accumulation of small decisions and growing trust over the past months. I had chosen this life, this man, this future. Not when I said "I do" in the cathedral, but in all the days that followed. Rising from my bed, I moved to the connecting door and turned the handle. Alexander was awake, sitting in an armchair by the window, a book open in his lap. He looked up as I entered, his expression questioning but hopeful. "I don't need time, after all," I said softly, crossing the threshold that had remained uncrossed for 3 months. "I choose to stay, not because I have to, but because I want to." As he rose to meet me, I saw in his eyes not the calculation or control I had once feared, but something I never expected to find in this arranged marriage, the beginning of love, freely given and freely received. The mafia boss who had claimed me at the altar had offered me freedom, only to find I had already chosen him. And in that choice, we both found something neither of us had been looking for that day in the cathedral. Not just security or status, but the promise of genuine happiness together.